Andrew Berry has some tough decisions. What do you think that the contract-wise? What do you think the toughest decisions? How do you think they shake out?
I really just think that for me, the toughest decision continues to be the Nick Chubb contract because I do think you have to do right by Nick Chubb. And I think that's the biggest deal that's going to be like Andrew Berry himself said it's an elephant in the room. And I said it at the time. The fact that, Andrew famously does not give away in his own does not give a lot away in his press conferences. He has been self-deprecating about that fact before. We all know it. We talk about it all the time. So the fact that he even referred to it as an elephant in the room to me is incredibly noteworthy because look, I think the reality is, again, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but they're going to have to figure out something there, whether it's an incentive-based contract, whether it's some bonuses that they can give to Nick Chubb, something. But I do think that is, the top priority for me is how are they going to figure that out? Because ultimately you can't let things just stand pat, knowing the injury he's coming off of, knowing what your cap situation is. So really that is just the biggest question. And then secondary to that is, hey, are you going to decide to move on from Jack Conklin, or are you going to try to trade Jed Wills? Just because of the discussion we had about the tackle situation. I don't know if you really need two of those guys. The Conklin extension just happened in 2022. Knowing his injury history, I was a little surprised that he got that extension when he did. But hey, you've lost another year of him because of his own season-ending injury. So those to me are like the top two guys I'm most curious about is what's going to happen with Nick Chubb's deal. And I think Nick Chubb's going to stay in Cleveland. It's just going to be how do they work the deal out. But is Jack Conklin going to be here next year? And I think this team learned interestingly too that tackle you can get thin at pretty quick. So would they want to keep him around? I don't know, but you're going to have three guys who I think all would expect to start in that room. So I'm curious to see how they handle it and if Jack just sort of ends up being the guy that they move on from. But I don't think we talked about this yesterday on the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Like, I just don't think there are a ton of like cap casualty guys on this team. They're in pretty good shape for this upcoming year. So it is interesting.